Hi, everyone. Okay, great. I just got the A-OK on being able to be heard, which is awesome. Nobody's here. Can everyone here hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Excellent. How are you?
Good.
Have any of you tuned in since the morning? There's been some beautiful coverage since the morning on this website. It's been great. So, hello everyone. This is a panel called Art in the Trenches, and we have a few people here, a few panelists here who've been in the trenches, like me, like all of us. This pandemic has been unprecedented in so many ways, but specifically because somehow we are all incredibly united in feeling this trap. But trap is a word that's not really unfamiliar to us artists. We are we are really clear with traps in our lives. We have um, um, one of the ways that we actually pull ourselves out of traps is finding them and then and hanging out with that feeling and then finding a way to create. Um, I'm a lens-based artist myself, and I want to welcome an incredible set of panelists here. We have illustrators, typographers, hip-hop artists. We have television developers, lettering artists, and multidisciplinary studio artists. So a warm welcome to Vic Lee, Paul Russell, Jason Frank, Jenna Blazevich, Lauren Holmes. Um, I'm so glad that we are finally getting to do this all these weeks of going back and forth. So I just want to start with saying that first of all, one of the gifts of these of this coronavirus pandemic has been that we can have Bombay, Chicago, Philadelphia, London, Brooklyn, LA, Detroit, Cincinnati, all on one platform. And it's not that we couldn't do this before, but now we are forced to do it because there's no other way to do it. And that's been a pretty beautiful thing. While it's been awful, here we are to discuss how it can also be beautiful, all at the same time as being awful. And I think that that's the part that's really interesting, is that we can walk that line. So I'm going to start with just asking all of you a very open-ended question. We talked a little bit earlier about this idea of being organic and functioning, having a comfort with operating from blurred lines. And I think this means something to each one of you. I know it means something to me as an artist. Perhaps we could just take turns, and I'll just go down the list and ask each one of you if you could just talk a little bit about a seemingly blurred moment where you knew that you would rise from it, but in the last few months there was a moment when you felt like you were sinking. And is that something, maybe we can start with Lauren, and if you could talk a little bit about what this means to you.
Yeah, absolutely. I've been very fortunate throughout my 7-year career to have had very little creative block. And once the stay-at-home orders were in place, maybe 3 weeks afterwards, I had a complete meltdown. For the first time in a long time, didn't have any motivation. I didn't feel creative. All I could muster the strength to do was just watch YouTube videos. I watched a lot of like old pop punk emo music videos from like 2001. I have no idea why. And I kept kind of, I guess, dwelling on what should I make? You know, I can make anything, I can do anything. Why can't I come up with any ideas? And one way I was able to start to rise from that was by shifting the focus away from myself and like self-generated things and making stuff for other people. So I started making pom-pom earrings for my friends. I started answering questions for my students, just being in service of other people. And that helped lift me out of my funk, I suppose. But yeah, I had a pretty bad 3 weeks of creative block, and I feel like I'm still coming out of it a little bit. It's up and down every day.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, in a way, like I live by the beach, and I think that that is such a fascinating analogy of like being up and down. It just makes me think of waves now. And I think in a way, this experience in the last few months has been really very much like this ebb and flow of who's going to ride it. Is it going to ride me, or am I going to ride it? And I'd love to hear what, I'm just going to pick somebody. Jenna, can you speak to this a little bit? How do you feel about it?
I don't have an exact moment. I mean, definitely I can relate to what, Lauren has just said. And especially the part where I feel like I'm still sort of figuring it out. But I have been faced with an opportunity to just sort of understand myself better in the ways that I kind of thought that I worked best, but with these new restrictions, it hasn't necessarily been enough that I'm self-motivated and that I can set my own timelines for things and assign myself projects, because if something major is going on, that doesn't necessarily still apply. And I guess to not quite answer your question, I've just been trying to reframe the way that I think of myself and the ways that I spend my days as valuable, and not only base that on productivity and whether or not I have something beautiful to share on social media. It's been an opportunity to really focus on what matters to me, and just reprioritize and see where that takes me in the future, then hopefully have a more sustainable balance with things that maybe I wouldn't have had otherwise.
Yeah. I mean, I think it is a fascinating thing, right? Like this idea of balance has definitely been paramount, because for those of us who have children, childcare is taken away. For those of us who went to a physical office or a studio space to create and didn't work from home, the home has become like the ultimate front, and like teamwork has kind of gone to the next level. Not just the collaborations that we are having with each other, but the collaborations that we have to cause inside our own home. And Vic, can you follow up with that and tell us a little bit more about how your life has been?
Yeah, sure. It's kind of a strange one for me, because I've kind of worked on my own for about 10 years now. Mm-hmm. And I am, I guess, very self-motivated. I think the lowest point for me, I suppose, was just the insecurity of everything, really. I think really not knowing, and being in the UK, our government were pretty crap, to put it politely, at letting us know what was going on. So I think if I'm not working, so I finished 2 big projects in January, and I met new clients to start new projects coming up in April, May, June, and obviously those just died. So I just took myself. I've got my own studio, which is just around the corner from here, so I could go there, and I never saw anyone, which was great. But I would self-motivate myself to do stuff, to draw, just to keep my momentum going. And I think, from doing this, I guess my insecurities at the beginning of this was writing and drawing things down, and then that suddenly became a project in itself, which has now become a full-time job, in the fact that I've just released the book. So my I guess my commission death ended up giving me a rebirth, but for me being my client and answering my own brief. And I think that's the most important thing, is to do stuff not with any purpose, and to say, well, I need to do this because this is for somebody else. The way I work is that I just draw, and most of my big projects will come from somebody seeing something that I've drawn or illustrated or painted, and then say, they would come and say, can you do that for us?
Yeah.
So I think there's a lot to be said about just doing stuff for no reason and having no end goal. It keeps your mind occupied, but you never know where it's going to lead at the same time.
Yeah. Interesting that you say that, like having no end goal. It seems like right now we're in that like kind of inevitable limbo as far as like news from at least here in America. I should speak country specific, but we're like, what lies in our future? I mean, it's like the most fog that we've been shrouded by in terms of, what lies next is not something that's, clear in any way. But that also means it's a blank canvas, right? So I like the way that you put that, you draw and people see what you draw, and you draw with no real purpose, just you're flowing, and then people see that. But as soon as you said that, I was like, people see, when you said that they see that on social media.
Yes.
And it just made me like, I had like a little voice inside me. I was like, thank God we had social media during the pandemic. This is not the first pandemic in the history of mankind, obviously, but the one before this didn't have social media. So
no.
To pause.
This is a user-friendly pandemic.
It's a user-friendly pandemic. So which brings me to talking to Paul for a second. And Paul, I'd love to hear you, because I know specifically that you have started writing a lot in the last couple of years. And so I'd love to hear how, in a way, I'm just thinking, if you've been writing for 2 years and putting your music out there for 2 years, let's dial that back to 1 year, 1 year, 7 months. And 1 year, 7 months ago, like when you were doing this, there was a lot more noise, a lot more distractions, and people could actually turn things off and go out for a jog, or go out and, go out to a barbecue. And, there's no escape right now. We are on our screens all day long. And has that actually been more fruitful in a way, especially the way that you put your music out there?
Yeah, I mean, I think the amount that we're on our phones, on technology, definitely interacts with how people are finding my music in a different way. But I think just being alone itself has made the process of making the music a bit more difficult, because I think hip hop specifically is grounded in like a very specific cultural experience, and the music that you're making comes from that cultural experience, and it's also speaking into it. And so it's there's an element of everything that I make kind of comes from these discussions I've had with people who are also the sorts of people who would be listening to my music anyway. And so I think when you're not able to have those conversations, it can be kind of difficult. And so I've had to really switch up the way that I'm doing what I'm doing. And so a lot of it is just learning to kind of sort of stockpile ideas, and just rather than, my general process was, I sit down in front of a laptop and a keyboard, and I just, make a song right there. But I think I've had to really kind of make things in pieces a bit more, because it's harder to have that motivation and that inspiration to just sit down and in a moment create something. So it's a lot of whether that's reading poetry or just talking to a friend or watching a film or something like that. I'm being more intentional about doing those things, specifically with the goal of pulling out from it, this is something that I want to say. This is something that I want to, add in or reference or, this or that. Because I mean, when you look at for example, like a jazz musician, when they're improvising a solo, they're able to do that because they understand the key of the song and the important chord progressions and everything. They also kind of already thought of in their head a few little riffs and things to add into that solo that makes it sound great. And that's the whole beauty of it. Some of it is things that are made up on the spot, but there's intentionality to it. And so I think of when I sit down to make music, to, write a song, I want to be in the same kind of flow state that a like jazz musician improvising would be in, to where, yes, I'm creating something on the spot, but it's grounded in what I've already been kind of developing and gathering, so I can just kind of copy paste things in and kind of surprise myself. It all adds well together.
Yeah. A great way to like kind of challenge yourself to become other people that you didn't necessarily feel like you needed to bring that out of you, but now you've got to pull it out. And it's just the thing that I find so beautiful is that art, the act of creation cannot stop. No matter what we're up against, we cannot stop creating, because to stop creating is to die. And even though there's like all that fear of like death looming around us, to not actually just how freeing it was to just watch that few minutes of a video right before we went live, to just see somebody stroke that pencil over and over and over. And it's like, it's just therapeutic, which is something that I'm going to return to talk about a little bit, therapy or self-therapy. But I'd love to hear from Jason on his process. And I have like actually really enjoyed watching Jason's expressions. I feel like he's probably like scribbling down ideas for 5 scripts, like while he's looking at all of us. Would you tell us how it's been for you in the last few months? And would you tell us, do you work alone? Do you work in companionship? How has it been?
So I'll answer the second part of your question first. It's a very collaborative process with our team, with the team that I work with. And, that's been great, because even in this time when it's kind of like we're in our houses and we're in our apartments and we're by ourselves, we still, can easily get on a Zoom or a FaceTime or whatever and talk to somebody that we work with, or even somebody just that we know. But like for me, more specifically, I think in the very beginning, there was kind of, and for those of you who don't know, I sort of, my job in a nutshell is to like come up with ideas for reality shows and anything unscripted, really. And the challenge in the beginning was like, we were kind of thinking like, okay, how are we going to come up with things that are COVID proof? Meaning, how can we safely make them? How can we make shows that like might even have something to do with COVID in a fun way, if that's possible? And that was really hard for the first couple weeks, and months really, because we didn't really know what that looked like or how we would even do that safely. But what it did for me, and I think speaking to some of the other people on our team, was it kind of opened up our creative lanes a little bit, because we were able to think outside the box in ways that we weren't able to do. Like, this is not for our company. We're working on stuff that's different, but there's one company that's doing a sports competition show that literally the competitors are in huge dumpsters when they're competing on their own by themselves. And there's cameras rigged in the dumpsters, and it's a competition between somebody who's in another dumpster. So it's like, what are ways like that we can come up with that really, made me think outside the box? What are ways like that we can come up with interesting formats that are going to be safe for people to produce for the next however long until there's a vaccine? So I think it's been really eye-opening in ways that have forced me to come up with ideas that I never would have thought of, had none of this ever happened, which of course I still wish it didn't, but it's forced us to come up with new ways to do things, and thus different ideas.
Yeah, like this forced think tank, for every single person. It's like you just it's like a sink or swim for sure. And it seems like everyone's swimming, and then that's the part, is that like, we're all swimming.
Yeah,
we're trying. We're not,
water.
Like, don't rate my swimming, I'm just trying.
No.
Exactly.
I won't.
I want to come back to Paul for a second, because it just speaks so much to the national our nationwide unrest, and this is, specific. It's not just specific to America, but particularly in our country, and with Breonna Taylor, with Ahmaud Arbery, with George Floyd. Everyone has not only been lit, they've been lit 10 times over, and then they've been trapped and they're on fire. And like the protests were just like a phenomena, not just the drive and the energy, but these were people coming out of being cooped up. And, it's like could it be bad enough that we are battling death? And in those kind of circumstances, people are still, there is still enough oppression going around that people are mercilessly dying at the hands of, police officers. And, so it was obviously that moment of George Floyd's death, like none of us will ever forget it in our adult life. But also with you talking about, creating and collaborating and finding this, like you would prefer to be physically collaborating. All of us I'd prefer that we were having this conversation in person, but I'll take it. I'm very happy. I'm so glad we have at least this, right? So how has the fact that you can't actually hang out with community at a time where community is going through some of the most disruptive changes in America, how has that fueled your act of writing?
Yeah, I mean, I actually do think so. I mean, I think what's interesting about it is that I have, in a lot of ways, gotten my motivation to continue writing from the attempts at community I've tried to find, just in little group me's I have with friends or things like that. I mean, in particular, talking about this kind of moment with everything that's happening with George Floyd and the protests and everything. And I think at first, at least in my mind, it kind of felt like, if I'm not making music that is specifically about, the plight of Black Americans, what am I doing? And, I think through talking to people sort of in the Black community specifically, I think part of what came out of that for me is like just a realization that I don't have to be talking about this subject and everything that I make, and that that's kind of what we're fighting for, to not have to talk about this subject and everything that we make. And so I think the beauty of being able to still find community, even despite the difficulty of connecting while you're stuck at home. I think the beauty is that you're able to have these little moments that can spur you to kind of change how you're thinking about what you're doing in your own silo. And so definitely for me, I remember I released a song actually the week of George Floyd's, really when everything kind of started spiking up, and it felt like, I think I released the song right before there was as much conversation about it and things, and it was just a happy summer song. And then as things started happening, it felt like, do I need to take down the song, or do I need to, it just feels like it doesn't fit right now, because I myself am not in the the headspace to, for this type of music. And then the people I'm making it for also probably aren't in the same headspace. And so, but I came just to the decision that, maybe art, I think art can sometimes be an escape, and art can sometimes be a thing that propels you forward in whatever you're already thinking about. And I think there's room for both of those, and there's importance in both of those.
Yeah, and absolutely. And you could be thinking about oppression, but taking pictures of flowers. I mean, it's not what you write about, what you think about, and how it manifests itself in actions could be two very different things. What it means to you internally and how you express it, that's the license, right? And that's the agency that, we don't have quote unquote 9-to-5ers, that's the one thing that we've got going for all of us, is that I guess working in chaos was something that we were familiar with.
True. Yeah.
Before global chaos hit. So, it's interesting. That's didn't New York Times, I think I remember like a couple of weeks into the pandemic, it was like, it's a really great time to be an artist. Like, one of the best professions in the country. New York Times says one of the best professions in the country is being an artist. I was like, finally, it took a pandemic, we're finally relevant. But Jenna, could you speak to that? Because I know you spoke a little bit about this and how much it's affected your process and the kind of meet and greets you've held in your studio space in Chicago.
Yeah, for sure. I have a storefront space in Chicago. My lease is actually up at the end of this month, coincidentally. So the month, from March until now have just been like a weird, like kind of holding my breath of what is going to be possible, how long will this last? And I think I've mentally been just willing to let go of the idea of having a physical space where I can host in-person calligraphy and embroidery workshops the way that I've been doing since 2014. Mentally, that just was something that I could let go of because I had, from the beginning of starting my business in 2015, already had a number of different things that I was focusing on and revenue streams and things like that. So it's been strange to try and find the same kind of consistent sort of workflow when I'm just going from my bedroom to the kitchen to a desk instead of having like the commute on my bike ride it's like 20 to 30 minutes that I usually go. My studio is, a good distance away where I get to have that mental reset, and I really enjoy that. Obviously I can do that. I can have a bike ride or a long walk or something before getting started, and I probably should realistically make myself do that. But yeah, just still in the process. I have these paint samples here, so this is a work in progress, trying to make a mini version of what was a 1,000 square foot storefront into a little, part of my apartment. But
yeah,
yeah, I wonder. But one of the, I don't know, I'm thinking about the question that you just asked Paul and stuff, and things just shifted in such a huge way when George Floyd was murdered, and I'm both grateful that from the beginning, the shop that I have of little, DIY produced products have always been things that I could use to raise money for organizations, and those things have already been in place for all of the times that I felt helpless as an individual and just wanting to feel a very small amount of useful by raising money for, organizations that are doing real work. But at the same time, like I'm curious what my role as a white, cis, straight, able-bodied woman is as an artist. Like I do know that there's value in like creating art and a revolution, but I'm also not quite convinced that it's my place to be doing that. So it's a strange time to have had 3 months of like all my, events and things kind of vanish overnight, and other things kind of just like get pulled out from underneath all of us. But now be faced in a great way. Like I'm very happy that we're facing all the things that we are as a country finally in this like grand way. But yeah, I don't have a way that I feel confident about like conducting myself going forward, but I'm just trying to feel it out and like be mindful of all those things.
Yeah, and I'm really appreciative of you bringing it back to some of the more core values of who are you as a sister, who are you as a friend, and those things feed into our artwork. And if we're unfulfilled, and if that cup is unfulfilled, it's very hard to reach in and try to make meaningful art when like the meaning in your life is missing.
Yeah,
I also think it's like pretty. I don't know if you like put that up intentionally, but the poster behind your head that reads "Everyone's exhausted" is like just so
Oh
incredible.
yeah, I didn't, but it says everyone's exhausted and no one has time, and they're eating skulls like cereal.
Oh my gosh.
It's just, yeah, we're all.
Yeah, I feel like I'm doing that to myself all day long. Lauren, I know we spoke a little bit about this yesterday, and I would like to open this question up to any one of you to answer. And that is, it has been a very interesting time for everyone to kind of wonder during this national wave that we're all experiencing with the civil protests and the unrest. What is our place in this? What kind of stories can I tell? I'm sure, Jason, even from your perspective, how can you make this COVID proof, like you said? And that was only one challenge. And that was when COVID was our only problem, and then we snowballed into an entirely different national issue. Not so different because it's been hanging around for 400 years, but, different enough that an event that nobody could dismiss was staring everyone in their face. And so, but you have to choose, right? And this is a question for Lauren, but again, for everyone. You do have to choose how vocal you want to be about it, how much you want to talk about it, or in what way do you want to talk about it? And I know that for some of us, it's the first time that you've got no choice but to speak up. For others, they've found other intriguing ways to manifest this in their lives. And I'd love for you to talk a little bit about doing that and not doing that, because I know that was a fascinating line you walked in your recent past.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, similar to what Jenny was saying, it's like art can be such an important vehicle for spreading awareness about certain things, racial injustice, social justice. And I've been trying to navigate my own role in like, where does my art play into spreading these messages? I think we spoke earlier about how there's this weird blurred line now between like personal self and business self that a lot of creative entrepreneurs, like they toe that line on social media now. And so for me, my Instagram has primarily been where I share business advice for artists. I share my own work. I share case studies. I try to share a mix of my own work and stuff that would be helpful to other artists. And when the George Floyd murder happened and then everything started snowballing, I was like, I've never been overtly political or spoken up about a specific instance on my like art Instagram, but it just felt, I just went with my gut. I was like, I'm going to say something about this. And of course, as artists, like it's totally up to us. Like, I don't know a single artist who comments on every single injustice that happens in the world, because there would be too many to keep up with, unfortunately. That's just the way.
Yeah, it comes down to what matters to you. Absolutely.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so I think everyone's just kind of navigating that right now. And yeah, sorry, I'm rambling. What was the original question?
Oh, no, I was like, I know that everyone's walked that line, and I was curious how you did come out on your social media very confidently with something. And I was curious what that experience was, because it's scary. Speaking up is scary. Dying is a lot harder, but speaking up is very scary. And when you do, it opens different portals. It opens different conversations. Some of them are really hard. Sometimes you lose relationships over it, and those type of fears make difficult conversations really challenging.
Absolutely.
So I'd love to just tease some of that out of you, because I know you've been navigating that. Yeah.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah. And like, everything's so public now. Like social media is just like the 2.0 version of the second version of our lives. Like we have two kind of worlds that we're navigating between. And yeah, for me, it was something where I just felt in my gut, like it's my Instagram feed. I can share whatever I want. And I thought back to all the advice I had given to my students and other artists over time of like, make the work that you want to make. If people unfollow you, I've always said, people who unfollow you because of stuff you are passionate about that you share are people you don't want in your audience anyways. And of course, like it's good to have discourse, but the internet's a weird place. It's like, most people don't even want to have discourse. It's just debates that happen in comments. And so I think everyone should just speak their mind on social media. And it was really liberating, to be honest.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I surprisingly
didn't get a single
mean comment. And I again, like you were saying, I wasn't even too concerned. I was like, speaking up is the right thing to do. I want to do this. And like any like slightly mean comment I might get, it's a drop in the bucket compared to everything that's going on.
Right, exactly. And there's probably people thinking mean things about you, Lauren. I'm pretty confident.
Oh, all the time.
But you know, but they are for all of us. And I think that that's such an interesting thing is that, you know, before pre-pandemic, you went out, if real life was weird, you were like, I'm getting away from real life. I'm going to go into the social world. And when the social world got weird, we're like, social world's really weird. We're going to go out and get a drink, you know? And it's like, you don't have that yo-yo anymore. And you
That's
have
a good
to
point. Yeah. To Paul's point too about like, sometimes art speaks about current events and brings things to light that we need to talk about. And sometimes it's escapism. I totally resonated with that because I've been listening to this podcast called The Sporkful recently. It's like a food podcast. And they said something interesting the other day that reminded me of our conversation about how they focus on food, which is like a lighter subject, I suppose. And they were like, because of everything going on in the world, you know, part of this show, we're going to have lighter episodes that are for escapism and then we're going to have heavier episodes that really dive into social issues. And I think that, like Paul said, we can hold space for both of those. And currently, you know, I'm trying to navigate that as well of like, what role does my like lighthearted art, positive art have in the world right now? I've been quieter on social media lately just because I've been doing other stuff. I've been reading and I've been processing and I've been working on projects. But what was I going to say? I was going to say something. You asked too in your earlier question, one thing that's really helpful for anyone who's struggling about what to share or if they should speak up about anything now, anything in the future. One thing that's really helped to empower me to speak confidently and like is to do my research and know where I stand on an issue before I speak about it. And so I think a lot of people who may be new to any social justice work or even reading about it or learning about it, it might seem overwhelming, but I think educating yourself is the first step to being able to confidently speak out about any subject.
Yeah, and to be open to re-educate yourself, even in, you know, despite your education, you might say something and then learn something from an audience member that teaches you something you didn't have an idea about. And, you know, as long as we are open and soft to being corrected and knowing that ultimately, despite our strong emotions, that we are human and we will make errors. And I wanted to speak to, you know, related to that, to Vic a little bit, because he is in an entirely different country.
I am.
Not that far away. 8 hours.
It is. Yeah, when you can get here.
Yeah. And I know. And I'm like, actually, you're it's impossible to come to your country. It's, you know, we're never going to see each other, but it's, you know.
I know, that's it. We're done. We're done.
We're done.
We have a nice relationship.
Our only relationship is, you know, it's bites for thought.
Exactly. Well, it's Zoom, and then it's been disconnected like I've been. So apologies for that, for disappearing. I didn't go and make a cup of tea, as I'm sure a lot of you think I do.
I know, you're like, I'm done with this. I'm leaving this meeting. Vic disappeared.
Yeah, I'm out of here. Yeah, exactly. I'll put a photograph up, and that's it.
Well, welcome back. Welcome back.
Thank you.
And tell us.
I thought it was interesting what Paul was saying, actually. I was, you were saying about, you released a song just the week before George Floyd was murdered, and it was quite a happy, upbeat song. And then you felt like you didn't know whether to release it or not because it didn't feel like the right time. And I think this is a real quandary, because I think life still goes on, and you know, at the same time that there's bad news, we also want to listen to good news at the same time. So I think there's so much bad news. I mean, it's ridiculous at the moment what's going on in not just in the COVID situation, the Black Lives Matter movement that we're seeing over here as well, but the politics, the disconnection from politicians with real people. I think it's just, you could almost be suffocated by this to the point of despair. And I think from my perspective, you know, Paul, if you're going to release a happy song, now's the perfect time to do it, because we need to be uplifted. And that's the reason, you know, for me doing the Corona Diary, it was a personal journey, which was shared on social media. God bless social media. And that's the reason why it came about. I would never have published it otherwise. It's just the amount of people that said, look, this relates to us as well. You have to publish this because we see something in it, even though it's your story. And I think the same as Jenna. I mean, Jenna said, like, you know, what your role is now. Your role is as an artist is to, you know, you don't have to be a political strong voice all the time. You can do something that touches other people through something that you do. And I think for me doing the Corona Diary, it's touched a lot of people because we've all been through it. And we don't want to forget about it, because this is a historical moment in our time. You know, this hopefully will never happen for another 100 years. And in a way, it's a really bizarre situation you almost have to run, rather than run away from it, you have to embrace it and say, look, this has happened. It's nature. It's not political. It's not man. It's not this. It's not that. This is nature just saying, I'm in charge. And you have to say, yeah, let's take a step back and, you know, let's embrace that, and maybe take a closer look at human beings from every aspect of life, you know. And maybe just try and, I think the biggest thing that we need to do is educate rather than criticize. But I mean, for me, from a political standpoint, it's very easy to look at the leaders. I won't go into too many names, but I think we know. So if you look at the leaders and you blame them for everything, it's not their fault. It's the people that are voting for them. So you almost have to go from the top and go back down and go, it's these people that are putting those people in power. So maybe these people need to be sort of, you know, not educated, but maybe just go into discussion with them and just say, look, explain to us in a reason why you're doing this and how you feel it's going to benefit humanity.
And it's interesting because you're talking about taking an action, whatever form of action that is. And sometimes that action gets you a reaction. And and in that moment of discomfort, either people go quiet or they go inert or they disappear. And so just to take a step to make a difference is extremely important in whatever way you see fit. And there's just as much a place for a happy song as there is for a you know, for a coronavirus diary. You know, we're like every all of it is required and necessary. And I'm just gonna throw a shout out here. We have the last 10 minutes, and it brings me to a perfect question for each one of you. I mean, if you think it's perfect for you. And we have two charities that I think everyone here who's watching and listening to should consider donating to, and one of them is Afrotectopia, and the other one is Humans in Action. And this is a free it's a free program for anyone who wants to tune in, but if they would consider donating to those, that would be wonderful. And so my question is, and it's for each one of you, and we'll start with Jason, if that's okay. And it is, whatever it was that was your source of inspiration. I know every one of you is a self-initiator, a self-starter, and you've done beautiful things with your work before and post-pandemic. And that includes the friends that you are, and it includes the kimchi you've made. You know, it includes everything personal and professional that you've delved into. But in the past, I know for me, the museums and the galleries, places to go see work and intake artwork were fairly important. And that was for me. But I'm curious to know for each one of you, if you can isolate a new thing that has become sort of your temple of inspiration, or a place that you have learned because of the pandemic, because of the trench that you've been in, a place that you could draw from and grow from. And if Jason could start, that'd be great.
Yeah, I will. But real quick, I just want to make one more comment on the last topic. even pre-pandemic, since last year, actually, we've been working on a reality sitcom with this African-American family in Rochester. And the kind of head honcho sister of the family, right when the George Floyd stuff happened and all of that, the movement, I was talking to her about it, and she told me, she said, it's not anybody in particular. It's not, just be nice to everybody. It's not that friggin' hard. It's really not.
Yeah.
And it's interesting, obviously, to hear it coming from her as somebody who I've been working with so closely prior to all this. It's just not that hard, no matter who somebody is, no matter what they look like. Just be friggin' nice. It's not that hard. And she says, I say it to my sisters all the time, and they're not that good at it. She said, but I do it, and that's what it is. That's what we have to do. So
Brilliant.
To your next question, I think really the thing for me that's been inspiring to me during this period, whether it's Corona, whether it's anything going on right now, I think really is what's going to make people laugh. What is the fun?
Great.
For me right now, one of those has been delving into something that I deal with all the time, which is picky eating. It's annoying to my friends. It's annoying to everybody. It's annoying to anybody I've ever been out to dinner with. And I kind of have developed a show around picky eating. I can't go too much into it, but it's really what is making people laugh. That is what I've been drawing inspiration from. How can comedy and things that are quirky that make people laugh, how can I develop ideas around that? Because to me, that's what brings everybody together. That's at least one of the things that brings everybody together. So comedy, things that make people laugh. It's not always a funny joke. It's really just also what's quirky that makes people laugh. What can I point to about myself? There's plenty that's going to make people laugh. So that's something that I've drawn inspiration from in this time, and I think it's been really helpful, especially in coming up with new ideas.
Comedy saves the world all day long. I'm completely with you. I've been watching Community, and that's been like savior. I love it. Can Jenna, would you speak to that after Jason, please?
Yes. I have my two would be, even though it's not the point of protesting to feel good, but I think that the catharsis that came along with going and actually showing up at protests and vigils and cleaning up after looting and like physically being present in ways that I in the past like had more channeled my usefulness into donating and raising money and things like that, which is also useful. I think having the ability, especially during a time when there hasn't been many opportunities to connect physically with other people, dealing with all of this and seeing other people care as deeply and even more deeply about the things that are just so important to me has been definitely a source of inspiration and a huge opportunity to learn in a lot of different ways and see people be handling things creatively. So that I know I said it yesterday, but I don't really remember, quarantine before George Floyd was murdered and like what I was doing and how I was dealing with like mental spiraling. It kind of changed everything, obviously. And I guess my other answer is my driveway is as far as I can go. I don't have like a back patio or anything like that, but the driveway, my husband's always working on his motorcycles out there. Like pretty much every day there's a reason to get out of the house and away from my phone. We bring our parrots out there in their cages, and it's like a very silly, like we're like the cartoon characters of the block, but it's nice because we see everyone, and it's just like, again, one of the only ways to like physically be around others who are dealing with the same things but differently. So the Black Lives Matter movement and my driveway.
There you go. Parrots and driveways. It's amazing. Paul, would you like to go next?
Yeah, I think two for me. Reality TV shows and New Yorker cartoons, because I think when something's mentioned in both, then you see the same topic discussed in entirely different ways by entirely different people. And for me, that helps me figure out kind of what I want to say, because I think I don't know. I think it's like different poles of American society, and yeah, I mean that's been a big kind of duo for me, actually.
I have to say, like, I'm blown away by every one of these answers. I totally didn't see any of the, I had no idea what was going to come, and it's been amazing every single time. Lauren, could you go next? Thank you, Paul.
Yeah, I just laughed at that because I feel like I've watched reality TV and seen New Yorker cartoons in the last like day. So,
Yeah, right.
Yeah, I think for me, similar to what I opened with, the inspiration that I've been able to tap into is how I can be useful to other people. And to say, similar to what Jason was saying about how humor can heal, I think each of us right now are going through a process of looking kind of self-examination and figuring out what our superpowers are per se. And if it's comedy writing, like I use a lot of humor in my work as well. And I do think it has a place. And I think tapping into our superpowers to do some good in the world is kind of where I'm trying to draw inspiration from too. Like whether it's for me lettering, I'm good at short, snippy, like copywriting that's funny. I think privilege is a superpower too that a lot of us are figuring out how to activate and use. And then the other small thing I would say is I've been finding inspiration in small moments of creation that aren't necessarily tied to my economic survival. This has been new for me. I'm so used to just creating. I'm a freelancer. I make stuff, I get paid for it, and the cycle keeps going and going. And for me, doing things like I made English muffins this morning, and I didn't Instagram it at all. Like I've been cooking a lot, and just little bits of creation that aren't necessarily tied to me making money have been a huge source of inspiration for me, and something I've been trying to do more of.
Wonderful. Vic?
I'll briefly tell you because I know we're running out of time. So my background before becoming an artist and illustrator was I used to work for the postal service. I was a postman. I also, when I was at university, I used to clean toilets to get money. I've worked in a bar. I've worked in shops. So this whole time, I wanted to give something back to the people that were the key workers and the people on the front line. So I've been giving my books out to the refuse collectors, to the postal people, to delivery drivers, people who work in care homes that I've met. This week I went to my local, I guess you would have maybe, what's a big supermarket like Target or somewhere like that. So I went to there and I dropped a load of books to them, all for free, all complimentary. But I love getting in conversation with people. And I think for me, the thing, it's really weird, but the book has become almost my way of saying thank you to a lot of people, but to see their faces light up because they are pretty much the people on the front line outside of the doctors and nurses are pretty much ignored by everyone because they're just seen as your everyday workers, the garbage collectors, the postmen, the delivery drivers. So for me, I talk to them and you realize that without them we would be completely lost. So this has become a really lovely time for me to give something back and also just have a bit of a laugh with them as well. I think they're human beings, and I did the same thing they did, and if somebody came over to me and gave me a beautiful object and said thank you, I'd be like, geez, thanks very much. It'd be like no one's ever done that before. So I'd formed these really lovely relationships with complete strangers who I now talk to every day when I see them. So it's beautiful.
Yeah. Wow. That's what a great note to end on. And I want to just echo as we close that the personal and the universal are always in concert with each other. And in every one of the stories that you've shared, like you've walked the line, you've found a way to feel the sink enough only so you can swim. And I think that is beautiful. And I hope that anyone who's watching here that knows that, we're all in the same boat, trying to navigate this like really interesting time. And I hope that we can all take like little nuggets from each other and move on as this period continues. I just wanted to say a quick thank you to Paul Benson, to Brittany, to Andreas from Plotting and Scheming and Brooklyn Creative Club for making Fuck This, Make That. And Just wanted to say that once. And thank you to all of you. I think this is great. Are there any parting words that you would like to tell the world before you go back and hang out on the internet more? Last few words from any one of you. Besides hanging out with your parrots and driveways, which was probably my favorite story, Jenna.
I'll send you a picture because it's happening tonight.
Okay, perfect. I think we should just gracefully leave now with chewing up the next person's time. But thank you very much.